Why do tanks still win against military cars even in real combat? Is it because they're heavier? Not really. The average main battle tank weighs about 55 tons, while an armored car like the Humvee weighs less than 10 tons. So that's not it. Could it be because tanks have more armor? Oh, Pip! In fact, some of the most heavily armored vehicles like the General Dynamics M136 have less than 2 inches of armor. About the same as an armored car. What about the heavy machine guns and cannons on top of tanks? Well, not exactly. It's true that a tank's weapons are usually heavier than those found on a military car. But the real reason tanks win is because of this, their mobility. In other words, tanks trade their heavy armor and firepower for speed and agility. This allows them to quickly maneuver around the battlefield, giving them several advantages over a military car. For example, when a tank approaches an enemy position, its loud engine and the movement of its treads make it easier to spot and target. In contrast, a military car's tracks leave much less of a footprint, making them harder to detect. However, there is one type of military car that can easily detect enemy tanks. These ones. And there's one type of tank that's easier to detect. These ones. But what makes tanks so mobile? The answer is quite simple. They're weak. Unlike tanks, which typically have 2 to 5 times more ground contact points, military cars have just... Meaning, a tank distributes its weight over a larger surface area, resulting in much higher ground pressure. This means that tanks can drive over almost any type of terrain without getting stuck, making them extremely mobile. But there is one type of terrain where even tanks struggle, snowy terrain. In fact, there have been many instances where tanks got stuck in the snow during combat, sometimes even without going uphill. This is why many tanks have tracks instead of wheels. Although tracks do have a larger surface area, they also exert a lot of pressure on the ground, which can cause them to sink into soft surfaces like snow. In the end, it all comes down to this traction. A tank's tracks provide much more traction than wheels, allowing them to operate effectively in almost any environment. So the next time you see a tank on the battlefield, remember that its mobility is what makes it such a formidable weapon. Hit the like button for more informative videos about tanks.